Well, welcome everybody. This is Mr. Whitty again. Today we're looking at lesson 3 on formulas in Excel. So today we're going to have a look at formulas, and we're going to start off by using a very simple formula. So we're looking at our old spreadsheet that we're using for formatting, and we're just going to do a couple of simple formulas to just give you the idea of how a formula is created. So we're going to start off by doing the total. So if we click down here in our total box, this is what we want, where we want the total to show up of all of the students, fictional students in this case, that have voted for their favorite soft drink. So we've got a list of all these numbers here that I'm going to add up. Now, whenever you're entering a formula into Excel, what you want to do is you want to use the equal sign first. The equal sign is what tells Excel that you're entering a formula into this cell and not actually entering text or something that you want to actually show in the cell. So in this case, we're actually entering a formula that we want to calculate the list of different numbers that we've got above us. So if we click on the equal sign, now Excel knows that we're actually entering a formula. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. We can do this the hard way, or we can do it the easy way. The hard way is by adding up each one of the individual cells that are inside of our calculation. So we want to enter all of the, add up all of the cells from B4 down to B11. So we could say equals B4 plus B5 plus B6 plus B7, and we could keep doing that. Now if I hit plus, I can also just click on B8, and then it brings B8 into it, and then I can add plus again, and then click on B9. So you can add them either by typing them. You can see that by the lowercase letters here. I've just typed in lowercase letter b. Doesn't matter whether you have an uppercase b or a lowercase b, or uppercase letter or lowercase letter. Either one will work. So plus B10 and plus B11. Okay, and then once you're finished with the calculation, if you just hit enter, it's going to enter that calculation in, and it's going to perform the calculation for you. So you notice here is our equation, B4 plus B5 plus B6, all the way through. We're adding all of the different cells from B4 to B11. Okay, and this is where like the real power of Excel exists, the basic power of Excel. This is why we use Excel. We want to be able to calculate these numbers very quickly. The other really good benefit of this is, let's say I go in and I want to change a value. I realize that I made a mistake with root beer, and instead of 2 people making it their favorite, there was actually 10 people that made it their favorite. If I enter 10 in there now and hit enter, notice that the value changes down here. It changes to 43. So we've actually now increased the total value, and this calculation adjusts automatically. So we now have the ability to kind of move throughout our different values, and any changes that get made to our values will get reflected in our calculation. Now, so that's one way. That's a very hard way to enter that formula into the equation box, because really what we're doing here is we're just adding up all the values from B4 to B11, and we don't really need to enter it that way. So I'm just going to show you the next way, which is by entering a range. Okay, so the way we can enter a range is we can use a function to do that, and there are several functions available to us, but the basic one we want to use is the sum function. So I'm just going to delete everything that I have here, and I'm going to type in equals. Remember, typing in equals tells the computer that I'm using a calculation here. And then I'm going to type in the word sum. Now I'm going to tell you in a bit what the different functions are, or how to access some of the other functions, because there's a lot of different functions that are built into Excel that you can use. So in this case, you could list all of the numbers that you wanted to add up or to sum together. So I could, again, list all the ones, B4, comma, B5, comma, B6, comma, B7, all the way through to B8, separated by a comma, and that would do the same thing that the adding statement did. Once we get to B11, we close the bracket, we hit enter, and it does the same thing that we had in the previous example. There's a sum. We list all the values that we want to sum together, and it sums those values together. But again, that's a little bit more difficult than we actually need. One of the great things about Excel is that it allows us to create ranges, especially when you're using the sum function. So again, I'm going to delete the contents of this total cell, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to type in equals and sum. I'm going to open up a bracket. Okay, and now I'm going to highlight the range, and by doing that, I'm just going to click and hold on B4, and I'm going to drag down to B11. And you'll notice that it automatically puts in B4 and a colon and then B11. And then if I close the bracket and hit enter, now it's done again the same thing. It has calculated the sum between B4 and B11. Okay, so same equation. The only difference is we've used a function and we've used a range here. So the function is the sum function, and we functioned it between B4 and B11. So there's several ways to use the sum function. One last thing I want to show you about the sum function is that you can also find the sum function. If I get rid of that, you can also find the sum function up here where all of the list of functions are. And if I drop down this little box, you'll see that the sum function is right there. And if I click on that box, it automatically puts the sum into our spreadsheet. Now notice it wants the sum from B4 to B12 because it wants to sum everything that's above it, all the numbers that are above it. Notice it automatically realizes that favorite is not part of the number series that we want to add together. But the one thing it doesn't realize is that this is a blank cell. So instead, what we can do is, because this is highlighted, it hasn't actually selected it yet. So again, I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm going to stop at B11, and I'm going to hit enter. So that's the kind of the last way you can do it, is by just simply using the function that's available to you up here. And you can see some of the other kind of quick access functions, average, min, max, and we will have a quick look at this in a minute. Okay. Oops. Okay, so there you go. You've got a very simple, addition sum that gets us to 43. The next thing I want to do is I'm actually going to create a new column here, and in this new column, I'm going to try to calculate the percent of students who like that specific soft drink. So I'm going to use the percent. And then I'm going to use a little formatting trick, and I'm going to click on this favorite. I want the formatting for this, and I'm going to click this copy format, or what we call the format painter. We're going to click on that, and then I'm just going to click once on percent, and you'll notice it copies the format from the previous one. That's a little tip trick that you can use to kind of format your cells the same way, especially when you're doing something like this where you want to add to kind of a format. Okay, so we've formatted this as a percent, and we're going to actually calculate now the percent that each one of those soft drinks, or what percent of the total is the favorite of the students. So we're going to do this by simply entering in a formula. And again, now this is a little more complicated, so we can't use the percent symbol yet, okay, because what we want to do is, again, put our calculation in. So what we're going to do is we're going to say equals, and then we're going to say B4. So we want to find out Pepsi, what percentage is Pepsi of the total. So we know that anytime you want to do a calculation for a percentage, you divide the number that you want to find the percentage divided by the total, and then multiply that by 100. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide B4 by 43, and that's going to give us our value. So I'm going to say equals B4. We're going to divide that by B13. Okay, and we're going to hit enter. Now that's going to give us a decimal number, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. We could, in our calculation, we could actually multiply this by 100 and solve our problem, but I'm going to show you a quick solution to that in a minute. We're going to leave it just as a decimal value, just for now. Okay, so you can see that basically we're at about 11%. Now, again, you'll see how that's 11% in a minute, because remember, we haven't multiplied this by 100 yet. Now, I could simply go back, and now I could do the same thing for this cell. So I could say equals, and this time we want B5 divided by, and again, we want to use B13. And we hit enter, and you'll notice that now this one is a little bit more. It's 18%. Now I could do that all the way down the list. The problem with that is, though, it takes a long time. I don't want to have to go through each one of those cells and try and basically copy the same formula back over all of those cells. So there's a really simple way called fill formula, what they call filling. And if you kind of hover down below here and you get into where this little black crosshairs, see how there's like a white crosshairs that you can see here? If you go down to the bottom, it turns into kind of like a black crosshairs. If you click and hold that and drag that down, you will notice that it will now it copies the formula down. Okay, now you're going to see an error here, and I'm going to show you why there's an error. But what you'll notice is when it copies that, it actually copies the formula. So notice here, we have B5 divided by B13. If I go to the next one, it says B6 divided by B14. If I go to the next one, it says B7 divided by B15, and so on down the list. Okay, so we've had the ability to kind of copy that formula down the columns, or sorry, down the rows. And so what we can do with this, though, is we can use something called absolute cell addressing, because right now the problem is that we want it always to divide by B13, because that's where our total is. We don't want it to switch to, whoops. Okay, we always want it to be B13. We don't want it to switch to B14 like it does in the next one, or B15. We want the first number to switch. We want it to go from B5 to B6 to B7 to B8, but we don't want that second number to switch. So we use something called absolute cell addressing, and what that does is that will allow us to always divide by this B13, whatever value is in here. And the way we do that really simply is, instead of saying B13, we simply put a $sign in front of the B and a $sign in front of the 13. And now this is considered an absolute cell address, and it won't change. So that now if I copy this down using our fill formula, you'll notice that we actually get a calculation for each one of them. So now we don't get that same error, but we actually get a calculation based on that formula. And if I show you each individual cell, you'll notice that even though the first number that we're dividing changes, so it changes to B6 there. If we go to the next one, it's B7. If we go to the next one, it's B8. If we go to the next one, but the second number is always B13. Okay, B13 does not change because we made it an absolute cell reference. And so we're referencing a cell and we're making it absolute by putting the $signs in front of it. Okay. Now, I told you I wanted to show you that we could actually turn these into a percentage. And we're going to do that simply by using the percent formatting. So instead of showing it as a numeric value, we're going to show it as a percent. And we're going to highlight those numbers, and then we're just going to click on this percent symbol. And you'll notice now it automatically switches to a percentage. And again, don't forget, I can add or decrease a decimal. So I'm going to increase the decimal a little bit just to give us a little bit more accurate representation of what those percentages are. Okay, two more really quick kind of concepts. We're also going to now just copy and merge this across, center and merge, so that we can center and merge it over all of the columns that we have now that we have added this column. And we're also going to add a header. And to add a header to our spreadsheet, we simply go over to the view command, and we're going to view the page layout. And when we view the page layout, you'll notice that you have access to a header, and if you go down to the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that you have a footer as well. And you see that it's kind of divided into 3 different sections. So I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm just going to add a header at the top. That's the title. I'm going to use the middle. And actually, I'm going to use the left-hand side, and I'll put my title up here. So I'm just going to call this maybe soft drink spreadsheet. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to put my name. I'll put my name in this section. And then the great thing about this is that this header will now show up on all of the different sheets that we print. So if we go to print this spreadsheet out, all of the different sheets that come out will have that same header and footer. Okay, and right now all we have is a header. So right now, but one of the things you'll notice is that when we go back and look at the normal view, we no longer see the header and footer. Okay, the only time you'll be able to see it is if you go to the page layout, and there you see it there. The other places you'll see it is if you go to print it. So if I go and look at the print preview, you'll notice the header shows up at the top. Okay, that's our video on simple formulas. I don't want to get too complicated in this video. I just want you to have a basic introduction to formulas so that you can work on the assignments that I have given you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.